one mic. Had a little hiatus here, but we're back with you. Nick Damiani, Paul Lamb, Skyping in from, oohing in, I should actually say, from St. Louis University, myself, Neil Doyle. So it's been a little bit of a break since we've made a video. We're going to talk a little bit, halfway through the season in the NBA. We're having some great articles, obviously. You got to check those out on our website, crossoverreport.com. Some mid-season awards we've given out. But midway through, we're pretty close to the All-Star break. So we're definitely going to talk a little bit of our thoughts on the All-Star game coming up. And then also with that brings the trade deadline. So also some thoughts on that. So we'll get into that on tonight's show. But first, let's talk about, obviously, All-Star break, All-Star game this year being played up in Toronto. That starts the weekend of February 12th. All the games, they've got a million things now, like they do the celebrity game and all the good stuff, Rising Stars Challenge. But there's been a little bit of talk just a few days ago, some polls, the polls have been coming out. An All-Star game, obviously, in the NBA is voted through the fans. And the big talk has been with that, Kobe Bryant up on top in the Western Conference, one of the top leading vote getters. I think it's him and Steph have kind of been moving back on top between 1 and 2, and that's caused a little bit of controversy. Should Kobe really even be playing in this All-Star game? Because even though it is his last season, has he really performed up to the standards to be named an All-Star? He's only averaging about 17 points a game, which isn't bad for his age, but he's doing it while shooting only 35% from the field, and really the Lakers have done nothing this year. They're the worst team in the league. Obviously with the fan voting and Kobe being up there, do you guys think fans should be able to vote for the All-Star game like this? And kind of off of that, should Kobe be playing in this All-Star game?
I think fan voting should be involved in it. I don't think they should vote for probably every player. Maybe normally they leave one spot at the end for the last guy to get in. Maybe they could vote for the last guy on the East roster and the last guy on the West roster. But this is what happens when you give them all this control. Now, I think even more absurd than Kobe Bryant being in this game would be Kyrie Irving being in this game. Kyrie's not even played 10 games yet this season, and I'm pretty sure he's slated to start the All-Star game for the Eastern Conference ahead of a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's had a phenomenal year and definitely deserves to be starting in the All-Star game. But for him to get snubbed like that for a guy who hasn't even played double-digit games, but maybe Kyrie would be more exciting in the All-Star game, but being an All-Star is something you deserve. You earn it that year. And going back to the Kobe Bryant part of it, has Kobe earned it this year? And a guy that is a competitor like Kobe, I don't think he would like to be in the game this way. But granted, I understand why people want to see him in his last year, like they want to see Michael Jordan in his last year when he was in the All-Star game. So from the standpoint, I see the respect that all the fans are giving Kobe Bryant, but I wouldn't necessarily say this is the way to go about doing it.
Yeah, I agree a lot with a lot of what Nick said there. I think if you ask Kobe, I highly doubt he'd tell you, I'm having an all-star year, I'm definitely a starter, because he's just not having that year. And I think what's more important is the guys who aren't going to be starting because Kobe's starting. I mean, you have Kawhi Leonard putting up MVP caliber numbers this year. He's not going to be starting the game. Blake Griffin, he's putting up big numbers too. He's not going to be starting in the game. CP3, I mean, a lot of guys aren't starting in the game because Kobe's going to be in the game. I get why the NBA does fan voting. I'm not against the fan voting, but then you can't treat it like it's an all-star game. Just say it's a pickup game of your favorite NBA players. So this isn't an all-star game. If the fans get to vote for all the starters and everything, I remember, 6 or 7 years ago, Yao Ming was the top vote getter without playing a single game the whole season. He was out for the whole year. But he got all the votes because there's all fan voted, and there's 1 billion people in China, and half of them voted for him. I mean, it's not an all-star game. It's just a pickup game, your favorite NBA players. The NBA just needs to recognize that and call it what it is.
Well, and then I think that goes to then the next question of if this game should really mean something. An example we've seen the last few years where the MLB changed their rules in the All-Star game where whichever side wins, National League or American League, that team then gets home field advantage come the World Series. So that game now means something. So, but then the question is, does the NBA maybe need to change to that? But if they do, does that mean then there should be no fan voting at all if the game then means something? Because it is important, because that gives either the Eastern or Western Conference home field advantage. So should this game maybe be changed to maybe like the MLB where it actually means something come the finals?
Yeah, I definitely think it should. I think you get a lot more people watching it, especially fans of contenders because that would mean so much for them. And then you would see, like, a lot of times in the first couple quarters of games here, you see no defense and guys just throwing double alley-oops and stuff. You'd see tough defense probably throughout the whole game, but you'd still get to see these star players playing as hard as they can because they really want to win the game.
I'll be honest, I hate that MLB rule, that it counts for something, because it's just ridiculous. That you could have a team who wins 100 games during the regular season, get to the World Series, and not have home field advantage because a wild card team in the MLB, whatever, they won the All-Star game. That's a ridiculous rule. And if you do that, then you absolutely cannot have fan voting. I think that's just going to end up in a lot of problems for the NBA. You're going to have a lot of guys who sit out the All-Star game because of minor injuries, have them pushing it, have them getting injuries. I don't like that rule at all in the MLB. I wouldn't like it in the NBA either.
Well, it should be interesting to see, and I think it's something that it's probably going to be talked about, Commissioner Adam Silver, but I don't really see it maybe changing to like the MLB, but you never know. Should be interesting to watch. All-Star games always gets, some pretty good coverage, but like we've said the last few years, it just seems like, as Paul said, it should be treated more as a pickup game because the scores the last few years have been up in the 140s, and then finally, when it gets down to it, if it's close enough, then it gets competitive maybe the last 2 minutes, all depending on the score, but it's really not a competitive game. So All-Star Game's always interesting to talk about in the NBA. About a month away, exactly. It's February 12th, the weekend that starts. So that up ahead here in the NBA season. And then that kind of leads us into, with the All-Star break, that kind of transitions to about a week or so. I think it's after the All-Star break is the end of the trade deadline. This year should be interesting to see. I mean, there's been a lot of talk the last few weeks on moves that maybe could happen. I don't think there's going to be anything too drastic that is going to happen. I don't see any huge name players moving, but then again, you never know. Kind of what we'll talk about maybe is a guy that we each think is going to get traded, possibly maybe to what team, and then maybe a guy that would be kind of a shocker at the trade deadline that gets traded to a team. So I don't know, what do you want to start with? Maybe a guy you see getting traded to a possible team here?
Yeah, I think Trevor Ariza will end up getting traded at this deadline, probably to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Of all teams, I read the rumor the other day that they're talking about Trevor Ariza for probably Timothy Mozgov and Mo Williams. Mozgov got moved to the bench recently for Tristan Thompson on the Cavs, and Mo Williams' playing time has decreased with Kyrie Irving coming back, and they have Dellavedova, and Lamont Shumpert can play the point for them. So really just a nice expendable piece for them, and then they add Ariza, who would be a nice 6'9", 6'10" guy who can score off the bench for them. He'd be a nice addition for them. They would lose some defense with Mozgov, as he's the only rim protector for that team. But I think the Cavs are really all in for scoring, and I think they will take Ariza.
Yeah, I actually have a couple. I think it's pretty well documented that Markieff Morris on Phoenix is going to go. He doesn't want to be there. They don't really want him there anymore. So that could be a big piece for a contender. But another one that I thought was really interesting that I just saw today, actually, was Tony Allen possibly going to the Clippers. The Clippers have been playing really good basketball lately. I think they had like a 10 or 11 game win streak at some point. But I think what they're kind of missing is that two guard that they thought maybe Lance Stevenson could be. They can come off the bench or even start for them. That's really strong defensively. We've seen already twice this year they've blown leads against Golden State. So I think that's what they need to kind of push past not only Golden State but also San Antonio, who is playing really, really good right now. So they might have to give up a guy like Austin Rivers, but in exchange for a veteran like Tony Allen, who's proven he can play defense at an elite level, I think that would be worth it. That would be a big trade for the Clippers.
For me, I think the Heat have really talked about. They're sitting right now 5th in the conference. Maybe can make a move at the trade deadline. I think they can maybe go out and get a guy like Ryan Anderson out of New Orleans. Pelicans obviously not having the year they thought they were going to have. So Anderson's, I think, contract's up at the end of the year, and he said he was going to be a free agent most likely. So they might try to ship him. And I think Miami would be maybe a landing destination. Their front court's nothing special to say the least. It's been Chris Bosh. Whiteside's a good young piece. They kind of need another scorer, another guy like Bosh that can step away, like a 4, that can hit shots. And I think if Miami were to go out and get him, they would maybe be able to contend a little bit more in the East. So I think that's my lock, Anderson to the Heat. And then obviously let's talk about maybe a guy that could be kind of a shocker here at the trade deadline that goes to a team.
not a real big shocker, but a guy that's always been talked about in trades, Joakim Noah, Chicago Bulls. Probably been talking about in trades for like the last 4 years. I mean, I don't know if I doubt the Chicago Bulls make a move because they seem like they never do. But they always seem like the team that's always been one piece away for a long time. So I guess it would be kind of a shock, but I can see the Bulls trying to move Noah maybe to the Lakers, who would get an upgrade in Joakim Noah over Roy Hibbert. The Bulls maybe try to go for somebody like Jordan Clarkson. I know Noah probably wouldn't be the only piece in that trade to get Clarkson because he's a good young player, and he'd be a nice scorer off the bench for them.
Yeah, Bulls been good lately. I got two actually. Again, one guy that was big in trade rumors earlier in the offseason, but that kind of settled down was DeMarcus Cousins. I think Sacramento is still going to be listening to a lot of offers. I think a lot of the teams, like the Lakers that want him, just are not going to have enough pieces to make it worth it. I mean, we've talked about it before on podcasts and in videos. Marcus Cousins is a superstar right now, and he's still young. He's only getting better. He just needs the right situation to help him grow more. And then another guy is Dwight Howard. There's a lot of talk about how he was unhappy in Houston, how he wanted to leave. So I wouldn't be surprised. I guess I would be surprised if he moved. So I think those are two that we could see happen. Probably not, but there's still a possibility.
For me, I think this one would be a huge shock. I don't see this happening at all, but a possible maybe Derrick Rose move from Chicago. You know, he's had some skeptical comments over the last few weeks. He said he's most likely maybe thinking about testing free agency, and I think his contract's up in 2017. Maybe Chicago tries to get him out of there and get something. I could see maybe if they parted ways. I know, you know, the Knicks have been talking about they want to go out and get another piece. I think with the emergence of Porzingis and them only being a game out of making the playoffs, even though they're only a game out of making the playoffs, I think for them to make a playoffs after the year they had last year would be just huge, and it would really give their fans something to look forward to. So I think that's why they want to go out and try to get someone. Maybe a guy like Derrick Rose would turn them around. You know, their backcourt's not been playing awful, but they don't really have a big name in that backcourt. I think if they went out and got Rose, that would be huge, and that would, I think, really shock some people. I don't see it happening, but that could be a long stretch of it.
Who would the Knicks give the Bulls?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe you go out and you get some picks because they've got to have some early picks with how bad they've played the last few years. But you never know.
They'll be pretty good if they get Rose.
You never know.
Picks won't be good.
But that's my shocker. So that's going to do it for us. A little trade deadline, All-Star break coverage. Halfway through the NBA season. Going to get some videos out for you, you know. Back at school here now. We had a little break, a little time off, but it's right in the heart of the basketball season now, so we'll be getting some videos out for you. That's going to do it for us. 3 Guys, 1 Mic crossover report here. Paul Lamb, Nick Damiani, myself, Neil Doyle. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Coming at you from the Shy 708. We got 6 rings, Michael Jordan, great. Need to save the date, this a brand new debate. Talk teams that we love and talk teams that we hate.